Hey guys, I'm Emily from the Blue Mouse, and today we're going to be doing a Q&A answering your questions about my own personal business, business tips in general, including Etsy shop tips, as well as Instagram, knitting, and designing questions. So first I'm going to go over some of the questions you had about my own personal business. I'm just going to read them off my computer right here. So the first one, is your business your full-time job? Yes, it is. I just recently graduated college and decided to just give this a try. If it doesn't work, then I have a degree to fall back on. So I've been doing it full-time since May. And the second one, my journey through learning knitting and designing, and is it a hard skill to learn? So I learned to knit when I was, I think, in 8th grade. So it's been like 8 or 9 years since then, but I only did the basics for a really long time. So I only knew like how to knit and how to purl. And for the first few years, I didn't really even know how to purl right. I was doing it wrong. Only in the past year, since I designed my first pattern, have I learned new techniques and learned how to like actually knit and make designs. As for it being a hard skill to learn, no, I don't think so. There's so many resources online that you can use. YouTube is an incredible resource for learning how to knit. There's just an endless supply of knitting videos. It may take some practice to pick it up, but once you have it, you're good. And that leads into the next question, which is, how did you learn new techniques or patterns? I'm self-taught. I taught myself through YouTube videos and knitting books. You can learn online. It's incredibly easy. There's so many blogs and YouTube channels devoted to teaching you how to knit that are amazing for it. The next question was, in the beginning, what inspired you to overcome your fears and to just do it? Last year, I decided to try designing my first pattern, but it was completely intimidating. I knew basically nothing more than the basics. I knew how to knit and purl, and I just created a garter stitch pattern scarf, but it has tapered ends. So I studied a lot of YouTube videos to learn how to increase and decrease correctly, but really what gave me the encouragement was the community of people, especially, I don't know if you know Morgan of More Thunder, but she and I are close. We just talked back and forth last year, and she gave me the encouragement to just try it. So I just had it tested and published it, and you just gotta go for it. It's really intimidating, and you think that it's gonna end up and be horrible, and that people are gonna be really mean about it, but this community is encouraging. So I would just say the same thing to you that she told me, to just try it. I mean, what do you have to lose? And then, what are a few things you wish you would have known before turning the corner of knitting for fun to knitting for a living? I wish I would have known how time-consuming it is. Not that that really bothers me, but it's something to really consider. It takes a lot of time to run a business in general, and then to also design, and just to run a small business, you have to, you have to do it all, especially if you're just doing it by yourself. You have to manage everything, and you have to learn the business side, the marketing side, as well as whatever product it is that you're trying to sell. So it takes a lot of time. I spend between 56 and 70 hours a week of work, at least 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's how I can kind of make it work. But also, community is key. You can succeed by just working through the community, and I wish I would have focused on that a lot more in the beginning. Just knowing that that is how you grow, by working on building yourself into a community of people, and getting that support system is incredibly helpful for you. And then just to not be afraid to take the risk and to do it. I mean, it seems really scary to try designing patterns or try new knitting techniques or opening an Etsy shop, but it seems a lot scarier than it actually is. Once you try it, you'll realize that you really had nothing to worry about. It takes, practice and work, but it's not that scary. You will get the hang of it in no time. And then the business and Etsy shop section of your questions. So the first one is, how did you know that designing full-time was right for you? Well, I was in college last fall when I designed my first pattern, and I just wanted to do it for fun. I had no idea that people actually did this for a living, and that it was possible, but I loved it, and I have always wanted to do something that I love. I was never gonna be like a desk job person. It was never for me. I thought about going into photography, but this designing ended up being more practical and just more enjoyable. So it just kind of fell into my lap last year, and I decided to just try it, At the time I was still in college, so it was part-time, and then when I graduated, it became my full-time job, and it's growing, so it works for me. And as I said earlier, I have the degree to fall back on in case this doesn't work out, but I'm gonna keep trying it for another year or two. And if it keeps growing like it is, then it's working out. And is this job fulfilling professionally, financially, and emotionally? Professionally, yes. I love it. I feel like a professional adult working this job. You know, I've spent hours a week returning emails and working with brands and just, you know, coordinating things and planning, and it just feels, for a business, it's fulfilling professionally, and I love it. As far as financially, no, it's not that fulfilling at the moment, but I knew that going in. Most people, when they start a business, do not make that much money right off the bat. So I knew that going in, and I expect to work for a very little amount of money for probably the next year at least, maybe another year after that, and I'm okay with that. I would rather grow a business that I love for less money than, you know, go work at a corporate office and make a decent salary but hate what I do, you know? So as long as it keeps growing, I'm happy to, you know, not make a ton. So initially, it's not making me a lot of money. I live at home. I don't have a ton of expenses, so I can afford to do this full time, but I would not advise this if you know, have rent or insurance or things to pay for. Then this is not a full-time gig for you right off the bat. You know, start growing the business while you're working another job to pay your bills, and then once it has reached a level that you can make enough money off of it, then I would advise switching over to that. And as far as emotionally, yeah, it's fulfilling. I get to do what I love for a living. It's great. It can be very stressful. Like I said, I work a lot a week, and so it can build up, and you can get really frustrated. And you know, there's some times where I'll have to take a break for like a day or a weekend or whatever, and just take a step back at some patterns that I've gotten really frustrated with. But overall, I'd say emotionally, it's fulfilling. Then the second question is, how much of your audience comes from social media versus local craft shows? It's entirely social media. I don't do local craft shows. I tried one last year. I failed miserably. I made like 80 plus items and sold 5, I think. It was horrible. It was so disheartening. I've never been successful at selling physical items, and that's one of the reasons that I tried designing. So all my audience comes from social media, specifically Instagram. And how did you decide prices? Prices, when we're talking about physical items, I'm sure you've heard these tips before, but you take your materials that you use to make it and the time, you put them together, and you give yourself an hourly rate, you know? If you're okay with like a minimum wage, look up what that is in your state or your country, wherever you're from, and give yourself that. I would advise giving yourself more than a minimum wage. So this is one of the things that I didn't like about selling actual items, was this whole process of figuring it out and, you know, knowing what you're worth. It's hard, so you feel like you don't, you know, deserve the full price, but you need to charge what you're worth. And what I do with a lot of projects is, if it's something repetitive, like if you're making a scarf and you're doing the same row repeats over, time yourself. Over the course of how long it takes you, time, you know, 15 or 20 rows, and then find the average time for each row, and then if it's just a simple scarf, then you multiply that by how many rows you did, and you know how much time. It's a rough estimate. It's obviously not gonna include, you know, sometimes you're more distracted and so you're knitting slower, but as a general rule, that's typically what I do. And then give myself just a little bit of extra time for like seaming and things like that. But you can start there and then give yourself an hourly rate and multiply it by that, plus material costs. But that would be the general place where I would start. With an Etsy shop, do you like to have a stockpile ready to ship out, or do you like to do only custom orders as they come in? So like I said before, I don't sell physical items. I tried it. It never worked for me. I was never able to sell physical items. You know, a couple things a year to friends, it didn't cut it for me. But there are plenty of people who make so much stock. I don't know if you follow Janine at Knits and Knots Winnipeg, but she like cranks out her knits like crazy. So I guess general advice for just like find what works for you. I know that's kind of a terrible answer and it's probably not what you were looking for, but start with a few items. Do not just make like 20 different kinds of things. It's a bad place to start. Pick like 3, maybe 5 designs. Try them out. If people like them, then you know what sells, and some things might not, and then you adapt. and you find what does sell. And then I would say probably have a small stock available, and then take custom orders if you want. But again, it's your own preference. If you like to just make things a lot, then have a stockpile. Or if you don't like to make it unless you know for sure that you're gonna have a sale, then do a custom order. But just make sure it's selling before you make like 50 of a hat. You know, if you sell a lot of those, then that would be the time to stockpile. But if you haven't sold a single one, but it's still your favorite design, you still haven't sold one, so don't stockpile it. How do you predict turnaround time so you don't get overwhelmed? Again, this goes back to like timing yourself. So if you're making, you know, a limited amount of variety and styles, then you know how long it takes you to make a certain kind of hat. So you know that this takes you like 2 hours, but you only have an hour a day to knit, then it takes you 2 days to make it, you know. Give yourself some leeway. Always quote them longer than under. So if you think it'll take you 3 days, quote them 5, because you would rather get it to them earlier, you know, ship it earlier. They'll be really excited about that than to be like a day late and be like, hey, sorry, I still need a couple days. That will piss them off probably. So always quote longer, and then they'll be happily surprised if you're early with it. And then the next question is advice on what it takes to start an Etsy shop. So I feel like there's already so much information about this out there that I'm just going to be repeating everyone, but I'll give you my general advice, I guess. Start small, be practical. It's, I think, easy to look at these big companies and these big Etsy shops who have just an entire store filled with items, and you're like, I want to have 150 options. Don't go there. You will overwhelm yourself, and you'll probably overwhelm your customers. Start small. Offer a few different styles and some of your favorite colors. You know, some colors that'll sell. Neutrals are always great for that. Be practical, you know your limits. You don't have to start out with like a ton of stock. You can start out doing custom orders and see if you get any bites. But yeah, pick a few key items to sell. You can do multiple colors, but don't sell a wide variety in the beginning. Have good pictures. Invest in good pictures if you can. You can get good pictures on your phone. Go outside and get natural light and have them modeled. I don't know about you, but when I go visit a shop on Etsy and someone's modeling it versus it being flat on a table, I am way more likely to buy it from the person who's modeling it. You can tell how it fits, how it looks. It's much better to do it that way. Natural light, again, is your friend. You always want to use that. Like I said, I don't sell physical items. It never stuck for me. So I can't really offer you a whole lot of tested advice on this. Some things that have worked, I invested in a cheap, like $10 Amazon scale, and that helps with shipping a lot because you know exactly what your item's gonna weigh. Obviously, if you make something really huge, it's not gonna fit on these tiny little scales, but it's 10 bucks. So if you make like small things and you can weigh it that way, it's easier to do the whole mailing from Etsy, and you can print labels off at your house. Poly mailers are really cheap. You can get like 150 of them for like 8 bucks, 10 bucks or something. Those are great. And they come with like sticky sides so you can close them without needing any tape. It's great, it's a time saver. And then I also bought these it's like printer paper, but I'm blanking on the word. It's a sticker. So you print it on it, you print your label, and then you just peel it off and you can stick it on your box or your poly mailer or whatever. And you can, expedite your shipping. It makes it a lot easier. So the next question is, what did you do to start your Etsy? Basically what I just told you with the last question, but other than those tips, I'd say social media is key. That's how you get people to look at your Etsy shop. For me, I was never really able to be found on Etsy very well without social media. I know that some people are very good at like SEO, which is search engine optimization, and that's how you're found higher on searches. I'm okay at it. I'm not great. Even then, there's still a ton of competition on Etsy, so I'd say start with social media. Ramp up your business there and get people to go to Etsy. Pick a platform. You don't have to have them all, just pick one that works for you. Test them out and see what you like and see what works. I find that Instagram is my best platform. Most of my sales come from people seeing my Instagram. all of my collaborations and things like that come from people seeing the Instagram. So Facebook I tried, it didn't really work for me. Pinterest, kind of works. I know it works for some people. I still haven't been able to really figure that one out yet, but just find one and stick with it. You don't have to do them all. Find what works for you. Also, you don't have to pay for ads. I think I tried ads maybe once, like a year and a half, 2 years ago. Didn't really work for me, but everything now is all organic. It comes through social media. So you don't need to pay for ads, and especially because it's pricey. And for a lot of them, I don't find that they really work that well. So, I mean, use what works for you, but you do not have to use ads. You don't have to spend money on them. And the next question is, did you struggle with anything when you first started an Etsy shop, and how did you overcome them? When I started one, I wasn't selling anything. I mean, I was doing it as a hobby, but I wasn't selling things. And I think one of the big issues was that I wasn't on social media for it. I was just kind of like, here's a few hats, see if those sell. They weren't very well made either, but I mean, I wasn't selling anything. And so what helped overcome that was that I adapted. Physical items weren't working for me, so I adapted to patterns, and patterns work for me. So you just gotta find what works. It doesn't have to be the transition from physical to digital, but you know, if you're trying to sell like a bunch of different styles and none of them are working, maybe, you know, those kinds of hats or whatever they are aren't what's gonna work for you. Try something else. You know, just keep testing it out and see what works. So the next question is, how sustainable is a knitting business full-time? And I'd say it's not incredibly sustainable initially, as with any small business that you're building up. You have to build it up and make it sustainable, and I think it can be. There are plenty of people that I know of in this community who do knitting or designing or, you know, things like that full-time, and they can do that and they can sustain themselves, but not everybody can. And I think you gotta start small and, you know, work your other job while you can and grow your business, and then once your business has started to take off, then you can switch over, quit your other job and start doing it full-time. But it's not something that you could probably just jump right into and be incredibly successful. Also, I think you can make it more sustainable if you adapt for different seasons. If you're trying to sell like a really warm wool sweater in June, it's not probably gonna work very well. Probably won't be able to sell it. So you wanna adapt. You know, sell blankets. People still buy blankets in pretty much year round. And then you could sell home goods. Washcloths, pillow designs, again, blankets and things like that. But you could also do clothing. You could do like summer tops and wraps, like light wraps and things. But you just have to adapt, you know, you can't sell the really cozy stuff to people in the middle of summer. It won't work. So as long as you keep adapting year round, I think you'll do well. You can make it sustainable. Other than that, I would say it's not for everyone. It's not super sustainable. You make it work if you work really hard in it. Otherwise, it's not for everybody. I don't know if you follow, I've already mentioned her before, but Janine at Knits and Knots Winnipeg, but she works like crazy. I mean, she'll like show what she's made in like 3 days, and it's like 80 items. You're like, how the heck did you do that? I don't get it. But that's how she can be sustainable, because she works like crazy and she can crank out items like crazy. If you're willing to do that, then you know you could be successful and it can be sustainable for you. But you have to figure out if that is viable for you or not. Alright, now on to the next section, which is Instagram questions. So the first one is, how do you become a part of a community of other fun, creative Instagrammers? It's pretty easy. You make an account and you just start interacting with people. You find a core group of people to follow and consistently interact with that you like, and you just start becoming friends with them, you know? You respond to their Instagram posts and their stories, and you just interact like you would with a normal friend. and then you'll start to actually create friendships with these people. You know, you can do this on Ravelry as well. I know that there's a lot of like forums for knitting and crocheting on there. You can meet people and interact that way, but just consistently keep up with people, you know, be interested in their lives, and then you'll start to be integrated into the community. You know, find what people you enjoy, whose work that you get inspired by, and, you know, tell them. They'll love that. And the second question is, how has social media helped your business? This is the most powerful tool for my business. Pretty much all of my traffic and sales come from Instagram. A little bit from Pinterest and Facebook, but mainly from Instagram. It is a powerful tool. I would say that's where you need to go if you want to grow your business. More than 50% of my traffic and sales come from Instagram. And then the third question is, how much time and effort do you put into posts, and how much per week would you say? So I put in a decent amount of time into my posts. I think them through, and I have a group of like props that I use. Like, I've got this wooden, like, it's actually a cutting board I got from IKEA, but I use it as like a coaster almost to hold my drinks when I put them into a picture. I've got blankets also from IKEA that I use as backdrops. So I spend a lot of time curating a picture. I have an idea in my head and I take a million pictures until I get it right. It's usually about 20 minutes a day maybe that I spend organizing things, taking pictures, editing pictures, posting them, getting hashtags. All this is probably about 20 minutes per day. So it's not a ton. I spend a lot more time just in general on Instagram, interacting with people and commenting back on posts and things like that, and doing stories. And the next question is how to stay interesting to your followers. Vary it up. You know, if you do flat lays, it might be a little bit harder. I mean, switch it up. If you're gonna do flat lays, use different props, use different color schemes, different backdrops. Take pictures of you wearing your items or a model wearing your items so that you can get some kind of like person in your feed. And then also, I don't know, take some pictures of you knitting, or just vary it. Find different ways to structure your posts and to lay things out so that every post doesn't look the same. Some people like to do exactly the same thing. If that works for you, that's great. But if you're having trouble staying interesting to followers, mix it up. Try other things. Look at what's popular for other people as well. Like, look at really big accounts and see like which of their posts are doing the best, and be like, how can I make a post that has the same style as that, if that helps you. Oh, ask questions in your captions. I find that really helps to keep people engaged. It can be as simple as like, how's your Wednesday going? You know, or happy Friday, you know, what are you up to this weekend? It's just something easy. And the next question is just basic tips on growing an Instagram. Let's see. Comment genuinely on other people's posts. Don't just say nice shot or cute, you know, because it's just cheap. It's kind of a cheap comment. Even if you mean it, try and say it in a more like expanded way, you know, tell them what you like about it. Say like, oh, I love that stitch, texture is amazing, or, you know, that color just goes so great with whatever you're working on. Just be genuine and be honest, but say it in a better way than just nice. Or, you know, try using more than just an emoji. Don't get me wrong, I like appreciate people who comment, no matter if it's just like saying, oh, nice. But it's definitely really great to have someone who seems to care about what you're posting about and projects that you're doing. And if you want people to, you know, engage back with you, make a great comment, you know. You can kind of tell when people are being genuine versus just spamming a bunch of people. It's pretty easy to weed out. And I definitely comment back to people the way they comment to me. If you know, comment an emoji, that's all you're getting back from me. If you comment nice shot, all you're probably gonna get is thanks. But if you know, take the time to write out a nice comment, then I will do the same to you. Another tip is to use all 30 hashtags. I put them in the caption, I go down a few lines, and then I put all 30. Some people put them in the comments, but I found it works better in the captions for me. Use natural light in your photos. It's key. You want them to be well lit. And you can also batch photos if you know that you're gonna be busy or you're not gonna get home before it gets dark, batch some photos over the weekend. I know that Chantel of Knititude has really talked about doing that. I think she does that every weekend. She'll batch her photos for the week. If you have the time for that and you can think ahead, that's great. I can't. It doesn't work for me. I can do like maybe 2 photos at once, but after that, I can't really batch it any more than that. And finally, just look at what works for other people. You know, see like how they're getting very engaged posts. Are they asking questions in their captions? Are they using a certain style in their photos? Are they using a certain kind of color or a backdrop or anything like that? Like what works for them? If you're at a loss, go to a big account and look, and you can just see like, okay, this works for them. I'll try something similar. You don't have to copy exactly what they have, but just try something similar and see if it works. And then on to knitting questions. Tips and resources on how you can learn to advance your knitting skills and techniques. Try new techniques, try new patterns. If you're at a loss of what kind of techniques to do, find a pattern that's just a little bit more advanced than what you're used to, and find one that, you know, might have like step-by-step tutorials or things like that. Also, you can look up techniques on YouTube. If you want to know more about like seaming or weaving in your ends or shaping items, then go to YouTube. It's like an incredible resource for things. Also, like make a list of things that you want to accomplish or goals that you have for your business, for knitting, and then just try and check them off. You know, if you want to learn about these things, that'll give you a way to like keep track of it and work on it. Oh, you could buy a book as well. I advise that. I have a stitch book. Actually, I'll go get it. All right, so this leads into the next question, which is, what is my favorite stitch book? So I'll link this below. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the Harmony Guides 450 Knitting Stitches, Volume 2. So I was just given this by one of my old bosses, actually. This sweet old woman that I used to work for. She found out that I knitted, and she was like, I have all these things, and gave me like 100 knitting needles and this book. And I love it. So find what works for you. This is my favorite, and that's where I find most of my new stitches. It's my favorite resource for that. It's got 450 of them. I mean, you will never run out. But if you can't find what you're looking for in a book like that, Pinterest, YouTube, Google, any of them. Just Google what kind of stitch you're looking for. Also, I have the Vogue Knitting stitch books, all 3 volumes, but I don't like them as much. The one that I have, and I'll link it in the description, is much better. The Vogue Knitting ones, the pictures aren't very good, surprisingly. I have a hard time like figuring out what the texture actually looks like in the photo. Sorry, my dog decided to come down. Yeah, just find what works for you. This is my favorite, but everybody has their own preference. Just go on Amazon and you can find one easily. And the next question is, where do you get inspiration for new knitting stitches? So obviously that stitch book is one of my favorite resources for that, but I also I get it from Pinterest. I will, you know, even just see like a machine knit sweater that someone's modeling in some like thing on Pinterest. I'm like, I love that stitch. I bet you I can find that. So you either just kind of know what it is and look for those kind of stitches, or I will Google what it looks like, and I will just write out a description of what it looks like and see if I can find it. Just do some research, maybe ask around. If you're on Instagram, just post it in your story and be like, does anybody know what this stitch is? And great resources for that. But I'd say for getting inspiration, Instagram's great, but Pinterest is probably where I get most of it online. As far as learning new stitches, Stitchbook is good, but sometimes it can be a little confusing. I like to learn visually, so YouTube is amazing for learning new stitches. If I'm ever having trouble, that's where I go, and that's where I suggest that you go as well. And then it's basically the same question, but how did you learn all the different stitches? Oh my gosh, there's so many to learn. I'm still learning them. I'm nowhere near that knowledgeable. I know like a good amount, but not that many. I'm just constantly finding new stitches or like rediscovering ones that I'd forgotten about. I've got, I don't know if you can see it, but there's tabs all up here and on the sides of stitches that I want to try. It's just a never-ending thing. And then I've also got a Pinterest board full of those and a YouTube playlist full of them as well. So it's never-ending. And then the next question is, who do you approach or did you approach when you have a knitting question? I do this very sparingly. because I know that a lot of the people that I would go to who I think would know the answer are busy, you know. I won't tell you who I've gone to in the past, but I've done it only a few times when I was just like desperately in need. And I'm not trying to say that you can't, you know, reach out to people if you have a question, but for huge accounts, like, I'm not trying to say I'm a huge account, by the way, but I'm thinking like people that I can think of who have huge accounts who I would go to with questions probably get those questions all the time, and I doubt that they have time to answer them all. Some people have like Q&As where you could probably ask them questions, or they do a live video. You can go to Ravelry. They have like great forums and things where you can ask questions and people can answer. You could try Reddit too. Just recently discovered that there's a knitting Reddit. I don't really know how to use it, but it's there if you want to ask it questions. Spend hours scouring YouTube, or Google a description of what you're looking for. You know, if you can't figure it out and you don't know what it's called, either a technique or a stitch or whatever, describe it. And I bet you someone has done some similar description online. And then if you've just exhausted all of your research efforts, then I would go to someone. Try Ravelry first, try Reddit or something first. Try posting about it in your Instagram story and see what you get for people offering their time to you to answer. And then if you absolutely can't find it, then go to someone. But I would say that there's probably a couple times a week where I get a message in like my message requests that I've read, but I don't have time to like go in depth into responding to it. You know, so it just sits there for a couple days or a week until I can find the time to get back to it. And that's only like once or twice a week, but I can't imagine what huge accounts get. So don't approach big Instagrammers unless, you know, they seem open to it or you absolutely can't find the answer anywhere else. The next question is, how do you substitute yarn when following a pattern? So I was recently just told about a website called yarnsub.com. I'll link it below, but basically what you do is you put in the yarn that your pattern tells you to buy and it'll give you substitutes for it. I don't know how accurate it is. I don't really know how it works. Never used it, but apparently it's good for it. But the only other advice I would give is just find a similar weight. If it calls for a worsted weight yarn, find a worsted weight yarn that's similar. If it calls for like a wool or a wool blend, don't buy a cotton, because there's probably a reason that they told you to buy wool. Cotton doesn't, you know, hold shape like other fibers do. So, you know, stick with the same like fiber content, but you can just find the same weight. Or just ask the designer if you're being like a pattern tester, or even if you're not, you can ask people and be like, do you have any other suggestions? Usually in patterns, they'll give you like, here's what I used, but here's a couple other things that you could try. Now, finally, on to design questions. So a couple of you asked to have a look into my design process. It's very messy. A lot of it won't make sense. My notes wouldn't make sense to anybody but me. Sometimes they don't even make sense to me, but I'll show you a couple pages of just, see this? Just loose leaf pages everywhere, and I've got like a dozen notebooks filled with ideas and half-written designs, and I find that if I'm writing out a design, I can't leave it alone for like a week, because then I go back and I'm like, I don't know what these mean. But, so you can kind of see that that's like a big mess. I've just got loose leaf pages everywhere, which just, I mean, these are a mess. And then look at that side, and this is my design process. It's a mess. But that is how my brain works. So basically what I do is I get an idea and I draw it out very, very poorly. I can't draw anything to save my life, but just real horrible sketches. And I figure out the measurements and I write the measurements around my sketch. And then the most important part is your swatch. You need to get a good gauge. So usually if I have like a stitch or a couple stitches in mind for this pattern, I do a swatch, and I'll do a couple with different stitches and different sizes of needles. And I make sure to keep track of which is which, and then I'll block them. So I make these swatches and I pick what looks the best and feels the best. And then I measure it, and I'll go into I'll do a video and go in depth into this whole process. But basically I figure out my swatch, I figure out how many stitches there are in an inch and how many rows there are in an inch. So then I can create the piece. So let's just say it's like a rectangle and you've got 4 stitches per inch and you want it, oh gosh, now I have to do math. I can't do math either, so a lot of my designs end up needing revisions. Let's see, if I want it to be 4 inches wide and there's 4 stitches per inch, then you multiply 4 by 4, so you get 16 stitches is what you're gonna cast on. And let's say that there are 5 rows per inch and you wanna do 5 inches tall, then you would do 25 rows. Does that make sense? So then you create this piece that you have. And then you just do that for each separate panel of whatever you're making. If it's just one seamless piece for a scarf, or if it's a sweater, you just gotta figure out the math. I'll do a more in-depth video on this and a separate video as well for designing sweaters. But that's just kind of the general, overall take on it that I have. So that's where I start. But it's just something that you gotta learn. It took me a really long time to figure it all out. I'm still figuring it out. There's still things where I'm like, how did I mess that up? How do I not have that learned by now? There's a little bit of math involved, but once you understand it, it can be pretty easy to figure out. And I'm terrible at math. Anyway, you can do it, even if you're bad at math. And then I keep track of it. So I'm like, all right, I keep track a separate page of this is the size that I want it to be. And then I start a new page, and I do this all by hand. I don't write any of my notes down online until I finish. But I just write, all right, here's my needle size, my yarn, my cast on, all that kind of stuff. Because you want to make sure you include your needle size in your yarn for sure. Because sometimes you restart it and you're like, wait, what size needle was I using? That kind of stuff. Sometimes I'll put a project aside and I'll switch out the needles because I need it for a different project, and then I'll go back and I'll be like, wait, these aren't the right needles. So it saves me that I've written down on that pattern what size I was using. All right, so the second question is, how do you put your thoughts down on paper? Which basically I just told you about. Basically, I just make notes of everything. No detail is too small, because you might need that at the very end, especially if you're typing it up. And the third question is how to get the right measurement for items. So there's no real database for projects. There are some knitting websites that will tell you that this is their database of sizes, but I've found some of them to be inaccurate, so I don't trust those. So basically what I do is I just do a lot of research. I recently started working on a sweater pattern for my boyfriend, and I wanted it to be a secret, so I couldn't just borrow one of his sweaters and measure it. So what I did is I just Googled men's medium sweater size chart, and it gave me a bunch of different websites. I just found the ones that I recognized, like Ralph Lauren, H&M, ASOS, that kind of stuff. And I just went and looked at their measurements, and it'll tell you 38 to 40 inches around is a men's medium sweater size. And I was like, okay, that seems to be the average. So I looked at 10 different measurements on different sites, found the average or the commonality, and I was like, okay, this seems to be normal. I'll try that. And so I just did that with the chest measurements, sleeve lengths, and the collar. They didn't really have anything on the length, so I had to kind of guess that. But that's typically what I do, is I look at the average of websites that use this one size, and that's how I do it. And if I'm making a pattern, I'll start out with one size, and then I'll go up an inch or two for the next size, and for the next size up an inch or two above that, and then just include it so people can choose what size they want if you're making a pattern with multiple sizes. Also for hats, there are average head circumferences. So for different age groups, I think for women it's 21 inches around, and for men it's 23 inches around. So that makes it easier to make hats for adults. I think there's averages for kids as well, but I don't know them as well. The next question is, where do you get your inspiration? Social media. I get it from Pinterest and Instagram, occasionally from magazines. I love like IKEA catalogs. They're just beautiful. So I'll just like flip through them and be like, that's a great color scheme, but it would look better with this stitch. I'll write down that idea. And then how difficult is the process of designing? It's not too bad. I'd say right off the bat, when you're first starting, it can be a little difficult. It was hard for me to find many resources to help you learn how to design. There's not a lot out there. I don't know, you just kind of have to muddle through it and figure it out. Lots of trial and error. But you know, there's just that learning curve. And once you start to figure it out, then it gets easier. Last year, could not even make a hat that fit. And now I've got like 6 hat patterns out or something like that. So it's just like once you learn these techniques, then you get better at it and you can start applying it more often. Or, you know, if you don't know how to seam projects and then you get good at like a mattress seam and a shoulder seam or whatever, then you can start applying that more and more into your projects and it will get easier. And you'll pick it up pretty quickly. I've only been designing full-time since May. Back in May, which wasn't back then. Wasn't even that long ago. But it was really difficult initially to like get the hang of it. But now I feel like I'm starting to get a groove and figure it out. So it just gets easier. Put in the time and you'll figure it out. All right, what would you say can be the first step from following a pattern to creating one of your own? Ooh, the first step. All right, I'd say there's 2 main ones that I can think of. Understanding the power of gauge and swatching. You cannot design, well, you can't create patterns if you don't understand that. Okay, you can, but they're not really gonna, the sizing is not gonna work across the board for everybody. If you understand a gauge, then you can make anything because all you're doing is manipulating that gauge to be made into different shapes, different sizes, and things like that. So once you understand how to do that, then you can make anything. So the first step is to understand what a gauge is and how you can make something from it. And I'll do a video on that. And the second tip is just to learn the basics of seaming and decreases. Seaming is great, especially if you're gonna make garments. It's perfect for that. And decreases and increases, if you're gonna shape something, even if it's just like creating a tapered edge of your scarf, you know, you need to learn how to increase and decrease. And next question is, do you have a favorite sweater designer who you felt you are gaining skills by following their pattern? I've never followed a sweater pattern. Never made a sweater by following a pattern. So I guess don't have a favorite sweater designer. There's tons of people I know that make them. Someone who I like, whose work I really admire. Never tried any of her patterns yet. But she's on my list of like people to like go and try their patterns. But her name is Andrea Mowry, and I don't know how to pronounce her knitting business. I think it's Dre Renee Knits, but I'm not positive about that. But look up Andrea Mowry on Ravelry. Her patterns are stunning. I don't know how she creates them, they're amazing. So I'd say if you're looking for like an elegant, beautiful, simple design, go to her. I have not tried them. They look great, and on Ravelry say they're not too difficult. The meter's only like a quarter of the way up. But if you're looking for like a really easy pattern to follow, I know like her name's Mama in a Stitch on Etsy. She's got a couple sweater patterns that are beginner friendly. I have not tried one, but good reviews and it's beginner friendly. The final question, how are you not afraid to mess up along the design process, or how to become okay with that? So you're gonna have to be okay with that because it's gonna happen. You're gonna mess up, you're gonna make errors, but it's not the end of the world if you do. It's normal, it's gonna happen. It happens to me all the time. I just made some big mistake on a pattern that I sent to the testers a couple weeks ago. It was supposed to be a ribbed edge at the bottom, and it ended up being like some kind of messed up seed stitch. I don't know how I did it, but it wasn't caught until like everybody was done with that part. So I was like, ugh, sorry I made you follow this pattern and then I screwed up. I don't know why. When I was writing it up, I thought it would make ribbing. It's gonna happen. You just gotta grow some thick skin and move on. It's gonna happen and you're gonna be okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not gonna ruin your business. That's why you have testers, which, side note, always get testers. You know, always get like at least 5 people to test your pattern, and then you'll be good. Anyway, just you're gonna have to be okay with messing up. It's gonna happen, but you're good. You can do this. I'm gonna be your little business coach. You can do this, you got it. Just try it. What do you have to lose? If you have it tested, they're probably gonna find all your mistakes, and if they don't, then that's okay. Then you just email people who bought the pattern and tell them, sorry, I messed up. Give them their money back, or learn. You'll be fine. Don't have to worry about it. Just go for it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for submitting all your questions. I hope I got to most of them. If I didn't get to your question, it means I'm going to do an in-depth or a series style video. So be on the lookout for those, and yeah, see ya.